Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Borders podcast, the podcast that explores topics related to international trade. This podcast is brought to you by Buckland. For over 70 years, Buckland has been working to help companies across the world experience global trade in a better way. As a customer-focused company, we provide you with a single source of unmatched customs brokerage, trade managed solutions, freight forwarding, trade technologies, and warehousing and distribution services. I'm your host, Jenny Kaus, Corporate Marketing Manager at Buckland, and joining me by phone today is our special guest, Charlene Hillock. As Buckland's Customer Service Administrator, Charlene works closely with our clients to ensure a great experience. Charlene holds her Certified Customs Specialist designation and has been with Buckland for 9 years. Welcome to the podcast, Charlene.
Hi, Jenny. I'm excited to be here.
Great. And this is your first time here, and I think we've got a great topic to discuss together today. And it's one that comes up quite a bit with our clients, and especially in your interactions with our clients, and that is pro forma invoices.
Yes, pro forma invoices are certainly something that come up quite a bit, and we definitely deal with them on a daily basis.
Great. Okay. So just for starters, what is a pro forma invoice?
A pro forma invoice is an essential document in the context of customs and getting goods across the border. A pro forma invoice details all of the pertinent information that's required to know about general merchandise imports that are crossing the border, such as the responsible party, the valuation of the goods, special circumstances, etc.
Great. Okay. And I know that this is a pro forma, something that I've certainly had to do in sending things back and forth for trade shows and things like that. So I've had a little bit of interaction with them, but I could certainly benefit from knowing a little bit more. So this is great. Because there is some pretty important information on these, I'm sure that it's obviously we need to have them filled out accurately to get all of these details correct.
Yes, definitely. It's definitely so important that a pro forma invoice is filled out accurately to ensure that you avoid back and forth that could lead to costly delays. We definitely don't want those.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that would be an issue if it was not filled out accurately the first time or missing really important information. You certainly don't want to have that back and forth happening as your goods are getting close to the border for sure. So in this, I'm sure that over the last 9 years in doing this, you've come across with our clients some common mistakes that would happen when these pro formas are being completed.
Absolutely. I'm going to share with you some of the 5 tips for how to avoid these common mistakes.
That's a great idea. And if anybody who's listening is interested in getting these 5 tips that you're about to hear, it is available as a learning guide on our website as well, buckland.com/learning. It is available that you can grab, and I'll also include a link to it in the show notes as well. But let's get going. What's your first tip, Charlene?
So the first common mistake that we see is not clearly identifying parties and their roles in the correct area of the invoice. Each party in the transaction should be listed along with their address in the correct places on the form, indicating consignee, importer, exporter, shipper. Including contact information is also advisable for use in the event of any issues.
That's a good tip as well. Yeah. So that they can definitely get a hold of you to clear anything up. So that's a really good tip. And I can see also that would be a common error. I think I've actually made this mistake as well. Just with kind of getting confused about who each person is involved in the transaction. So that's a very good tip. How about another tip?
Right. Okay, so the second common mistake that we see is that the consignee in their tax ID number is missing. The ultimate consignee ID number is the Internal Revenue Service Employer Identification Number, also known as an EIN. It's issued to most business entities, or their Social Security number is issued to individuals. This must be listed on the pro forma invoice for shipments going into the U.S.
That's a good one as well. Thank you.
Yeah. So the third common mistake that we see is that there are unclear or absent descriptions of part numbers. or missing part numbers. Each item must have a detailed description and part number to easily identify what the goods are to the customs officer. These descriptions should be clear in layman's terms, and you should avoid the use of industry jargon.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's very common, right? When we work in a specific industry, that jargon becomes very common to us, and you just assume that other people are going to know what you're talking about, and that it would be certainly easy to do, use a term that's very specific. But to someone else, like you say, to a customs officer, you're going to want to make it as clear and easy for them. And if it's something that's not going to be in there every day, it could cause issues. So you definitely want to make sure that you're making it as easy to read as possible. That's a really good tip.
Definitely. Okay, so moving on to the fourth mistake. The fourth common mistake with the pro forma invoice is missing or incorrect country of origin. The country of origin in which the goods were made needs to be clearly stated. If there are multiple country of origins, then each country of origin should be listed with the coordinating item. Excellent.
Yeah, and I know that that's sometimes an interesting one in terms of people maybe being unsure, but usually with anything you have, you're going to be able to find that information about where it comes from. And I know there was some distinctions as well between country of origin and country of manufacture. So making sure that you have that country of origin listed on that form is so important, and having that field filled out, not one you want to skip. So that was our fourth tip. So that means the next is our fifth and final. What is it?
Yes, the fifth and final common mistake is inaccurate values or prices. The value and the price listed on the pro forma invoice needs to be an accurate value for customs purposes. In the situation that there was no sale, the value needs to indicate what it would have cost to purchase the goods being imported. This can also be indicated with no sale value for customs purposes only.
That's a really good tip because, for myself, when I mentioned sending things for trade shows across, I'm not, it's not like an item is being sold that I'm shipping to someone. It's, our trade show booth, for example, that I'm sending across. So I'm not selling it, I'm just shipping it. So that's an important little distinction to make as well, that I think could be confusing for people, because if that sale isn't happening and you're just sending it across, that might get confusing.
Right.
That's a really, really good one. So thank you for that. Those are great tips. And those are our 5 common pro forma mistakes, and of course, associated tips of how to make sure that you're completing a pro forma accurately. This is going to help you avoid delays, avoid back and forth, and ultimately save money, right? Because we all know time is money, especially when it comes to international trade. So those are really good tips. If listeners are hearing this and they have any questions about their pro formas, what should they do?
Well, if they have any questions, I'd like to encourage them to reach out to Buckland's customer service group at csagroup@buckland.com. We have a very great, helpful group, and we love to make sure that you don't have any further questions. So if they have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate. We're always here waiting.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlene. And I certainly would encourage anyone to reach out to csagroup@buckland.com. I know you always answer all of my questions, and so you're there to answer any questions that people might have. So thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us about these 5 tips. I really appreciate it. And as I mentioned as well, we do have a learning guide on this subject. So if you're listening to this and writing these down, you don't need to. We have all of these in a printed format that you're welcome to download. I'll have a link to it in the show notes, and it'll also be on our website under learning guides. So please feel free to download that, have these with you as you're working on doing a pro forma so that you can avoid these mistakes. Charlene, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing this information.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon on the podcast.
Definitely.
And that's the Beyond Borders podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to our very special guest, Charlene, for joining us and sharing your wealth of expertise on this topic. If you're looking for more resources related to international trade, check out buckland.com and click on the Learning section across the top of the website. Here, you'll find a range of resources, including learning guides, webinars, and podcasts. Our downloadable learning guides include Incoterms charts, common trade terminology, how to avoid border delays, and many more. We also host live monthly webinars, and we invite you to sign up and secure your spot for an informative presentation followed by a live Q&A session. And the best way to keep up to date on all of these resources is through our weekly newsletter. We send out a newsletter every Wednesday containing our latest resources, as well as a roundup of the latest trade news delivered straight to your inbox. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at csagroup@buckland.com or on Twitter, where our handle is @BucklandTweets, on our LinkedIn company page, or on our Instagram account @BucklandInsta. Thank you for listening to the Beyond Borders podcast, and be sure to tune in again and subscribe for more great conversations about importing, exporting, and everything else in the world of logistics and international trade.